Hey, so we are live. This is it. I'm on YouTube right now. If anybody's watching, I want to give you all a big hello. If you are watching live, I would say that I'm joined by a guest, but the truth is, I'm not joined by a guest. We are both each other's guests, so I'm going to bring him straight in. Hey, Chris.
Hello, how's it going?
Hey, I'm good. I'm great, mate. Yeah. So you're having some work done today on your house?
We're having some work done today on the house. If there is any banging and clattering in the background, then apologies in advance. And I'm doing this from our bedroom, which is a bit of a mess, but apologies for that.
Hey, well, you're giving everybody a glimpse into your life, man. So, yeah. So we'll give people a little bit of the background of this. And basically, I would say probably for like a month or something like that, we've had a little chat about jumping on and just doing a little bit of a live and talking about magic, the creativity of magic, and just a whole bunch of stuff that happens in the background, really. And I guess this is going to be beneficial for people who are interested in writing shows, people who already write shows and are already performers. So you get a little bit of an insight into what other performers that are heading out and doing this stuff for a living actually do, and what the way that we think and the process and things along those lines.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'll be really and it'll be good for us as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, hopefully. Or we'll end up having a breakdown at the end of it. An hour later, we're both in tears, talking about how terrible our shows are, and we've always thought that they're actually good. Hey, so I think the one thing that we did say we're going to jump straight into is this: the thoughts across a discussion of a routine. So effectively, we've somehow picked a routine. We've arrived right here to talk about it. And the one thing that we're going to be talking about is rope.
Yeah, so rope's an interesting one for me because I've always hated rope tricks because I've always thought, well, why does an audience care?
Hang on. You've always thought, why what?
Why does an audience care?
Why does an audience care? Okay.
And this is sort of a theme that sort of run through a lot of my magic is something that I got asked when I was many years ago. It's a great question to be asked by a child. Was not how are you doing that? It was why are you doing it?
Okay.
And I kind of went, I don't know why I'm doing it. And it sort of became a sort of catalyst for me as a question as to not a how does he do that, but a why am I doing it? What's the point of me doing this thing? And which for rope was always something which I love the idea of rope tricks. I think that they can be really beautiful and amazing things. But as an audience member, I go, why? What's the point? And then I found.
Does that not open up doors to make you question every routine that you perform, or is that something you've already done?
Yeah, it literally made me question everything. So they weren't asking me about a rope trick. They were asking me about sponge balls when they asked that question.
Right.
Why? What's the point? And I went, okay, that's a really good question. Why am I doing something? What is the point of doing it? It opened the doors to everything. It's how I approach magic now is why do I do it? Because that's an important thing.
Yeah. So the why question, I think, is something that I think at some point every kind of magician does open up that question in the mind of why am I doing this? Why am I doing a card trick now when I've just finished this? Or and not only why have I moved into this card trick, but why am I actually doing it? Which is basically what you've just said. But my take and the way that I've always looked at the material that I perform is I have in the past questioned why, but what I've always tended to do is just in my own head, my own rationale for it is always the same thing. And it comes back to, because I'm a magician and that's what I do. I can pick things up and I can make things happen with them. And I've never really kind of in my own head, like battled against what my audience are thinking, if that makes sense. Because I think like the most extreme of props of why would be something along the lines of rope. And the question is, why would I have it in my pocket to bring
Yeah.
it out and show a magic trick? But I'd never perform a routine like we're talking about close up now. I would never really perform my rope routine in the past and ever really kind of question, why am I bringing this out to do it? In my mind, it's always been, well, the magic that I'm doing is strong. So
Yeah.
therefore, I'm just happy to show people that I'm performing for this piece of rope magic. But that, I would say, brings us to your point of questioning something, because it would always make so much more sense for me to be able to have an answer to that question, even in my own mind.
Yeah, so for me, and it also made me stop doing as much magic,
Right.
because so I used to perform the Professor's Nightmare with so you got a short, middle, and long the rope,
Yeah.
and the routine would then start with a short, a middle, and a long. Then they'd all become the same length, and then I'd turn them all back to short, middle, and long.
Okay.
And when you ask why, you go, well, this is sort of pointless now that I've ended up in this situation. There must be a reason why I've made them the same length in the first place, which for me was, I ended up writing a poem about it, which was about sweets.
Okay.
So it was the sweet shop down our road, sort of the best strawberry laces, and I got them made into strawberry laces. And every time we went there, we wanted to stuff our faces. The sugar twinkled just like stars and tingled in your mouth. And there was a sign above the store that said, the best sweets in the South. But the laces, the strawberry laces, were the best you've ever seen. Some were long and some were short and some were in between. And if you got a long one, you'd jump up and down with joy. And even with the middle one, you'd feel a lucky boy. But one day I got a short one and it made me feel sad. There was a tap on my shoulder and a voice said, don't feel bad. The shopkeeper took the laces and he put them in his hands and he smiled and he winked and said this was something he had planned. Then he said the magic words, something strange like zip zap zoo, and then the short one and the long one were the same length as the middle one too. And that was the end then,
Okay.
which made total sense.
Yeah.
So it becomes more of what pretty much everything I do, apart from there are bits where I say, now I'm going to show you some magic. But everything I do is like a story. The pom-pom stick that I do isn't. That's my opener, the pom-pom stick in my cabaret show.
Right.
I do the pom-pom stick and I say, hi there, folks. Before we do anything else, I'm going to show you my favorite bit of magic. And I'm literally showing them a magic trick because I can't see any reason for a pom-pom stick.
So it's like a way in is just, I'm coming in and I'm doing some magic. Yeah, and that's always been like the poem that you just told me is great, and it all makes sense and it flows because you're probably doing it with some pink rope or some strawberry looking rope, and and you've made it all make sense. But that performance style is something that's never resonated with me. And I'm not obviously in no way saying that I couldn't make it work or it doesn't work, because I absolutely know that it does. I mean, you just to be totally clear, you do this like absolutely for a living. And I perform for a living as well. So we're coming at completely different angles here. And I think, definitely. And I think I have always really enjoyed watching people with scripted magic. I often find and sometimes think, that I should at some point start scripting something that I actually do, but it isn't something that I've ever kind of headed out and actually done like actively. What I usually do, so you've written your poem down, you've figured out the process as to why you're doing it, and what I've always done when I've took a new routine is literally learned the routine the best that I can with the manipulation side, and then I get a bit of a structure in my mind and I head out and I start performing. And over time, that's how I adapt it, So what is your process if you're writing scripted magic? What's your actual process for it? Are you picking a trick and then you watch somebody do something and think, I like that, or what is your like route with it?
So I'm not everybody that has their magic drawer, which they don't use any of the magic from? Yeah, you buy the magic trick and all that stuff. Everybody's got that. Yeah, I don't. Not anymore.
Right.
I went through a really bad phase of becoming addicted to buying magic, which and my wife said to me, she went, "This is getting a bit crazy." I was like, "But this is so good that I need it." And with a lot of the stuff, I went, "This is so good, I need it." And I did need it. I genuinely went, "This is great. I found it's fantastic. It's wonderful." And then it went into a cupboard. And my wife gave me a rule. She was like, "You're not allowed to buy anything unless you tell me where it's going into your shows." And so my wife's a creative as well. My wife's an artist. But she said, two creatives together, we buy so much rubbish, like for the sake of it. But she said, unless you are buying it to go into something, there's no point in buying it, because it just sits there and then you have another idea and another idea.
Yeah.
Or you see something else.
Never ending, like a cycle.
So what happened was I still wanted to buy stuff, but it got to the point where I was like, I want to buy stuff. So obviously a magician's rope slightly different with that. But with buying a trick, I'd be like, I love that idea. How's it going to go into how am I going to use that? So your picture consequences, that for me was a no-brainer, because I showed it to Amy and I went, look at this. I do loads of stuff for kids. I get so much close-up stuff for kids as well. People ask me, do you do close-up for kids? And for a long time I said, no, there's no point in doing it. And then I went, oh, wow, that makes total sense. And I could just go, yeah, and boom. And that's that.
Yeah. Have you not found that the close-up magic you perform? Let's take a scenario like you're performing at a wedding.
Yeah.
See, what I find when I'm performing, that all of the magic that I do can blend perfectly well with the children that are there.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. We've kind of digressed like quite a lot from rope, but my point on it is this. For the past 20 years, I've performed a rope routine in my shows. I would say genuinely, whilst I've been performing these routines in my actual show, I've received bookings from the routine alone. It's a strong, very, very strong and visual rope routine. All right. Yeah. I'm going somewhere with this. I'm not saying my rope routine's absolutely amazing. That's not what I'm saying at all. All right. But the routine is seriously strong. Like, I would perform it at every show that I would do. If I ever had to fill a 5-minute spot on a stage, I could go out and do my rope routine and I could come off and that's enough. And I knew how strong it was from the feedback that I got, not only from the audience, but also from the people that I was performing with, that they would say, go out, do your ropes. So I'd head out, I'd do my ropes, bang, I finish that routine and I'd go back in, right?
Yeah.
But where I'm going with this is this. It was only this year, early this year, when I was booked to do a show, that I took my rope out of my act. And this was like, it sounds silly, but this was like a big step, because it was like this, I'm going to take it out and just see how it goes. All right. And I know, because when I'm working with other performers, every magician has a rope routine that I work with. It's like, you know, you arrive at an event, what are you performing? They'll tell you what, I tell them what I'm performing, and we look at what we're clashing on. Are we both doing the same thing? Or I'll do we would even come at the conclusion that we could both do a rope routine because it was slightly different. You know, that's how much magicians really want to hold on to their rope routines when they're performing, you know, because they're staples in your act.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
And it was only last year I took it out. It was like my staple. What was that?
That's now my empty box of tricks.
Blowing out. But yeah, I took my rope routine and I removed it, and it was a big thing. It was like I literally did it on the day, and I decided to stretch a portion of my material out just to get myself, like a lot of the routines that I perform, I genuinely throw myself into it. I want my audience to feel like I'm just a person who sat next to them on a seat. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, and the rope routine for me was always this thing where I'm stood there doing all of this amazing stuff, or if I got a child up to help me or an adult up to help me, I would only still be doing all of this and hand over to the applause for them because they blew the ropes or they'd blow on. Do you see what I mean? And it
Absolutely.
was like, it was just this big blag of I'm doing all this amazing magic, you know. But I just decided to get rid of it. And to cut a long story short, once I did take it out of my act became even stronger. It became better. And it's just because I wanted to get away from performing everything that I'm completely comfortable with and just push myself in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
You know?
With that, I can't remember who said it. There's a children's entertainer. So children's entertainers, you've usually got an A show and a B show. Our B show is the show that we use for people that have seen our A show. And I think it's Quentin Reynolds that said it. And he said, what you should do is every time you try a new piece of material, you should remove your strongest piece of material from your show. He said, and then work in this new piece of material. Always remove the strongest piece. He said, then he said that won't be what you're putting in won't be the strongest piece. He said, but then you remove your next strongest piece. And he said, eventually you end up with another A show. So you've got two A shows. You've not got a show that you put in because they've seen that show. They've seen the best you can do. So now let's do something else. Instead, you end up with two best shows because they end up being worked the same. And you're pulling all your good material from the first show.
That does make sense. It definitely does. I think that's
a strong show.
Yeah. I think that's like a natural progression as well. With, you know, years ago, I would genuinely remove material and just put new stuff in. And I think performers with actual shows, you become very comfortable performing the same material over and over and over and over and over and over again. Well, we're always meeting a new audience. So we can do. And let's face it, we do. Yeah, I've worked with some of the same performers for the past 20 years to the point that a lot of us are still performing the same routines exactly as they were performed 20 years ago. And that's because you found that material that suits your style. And that's the way that my rope was as well. That the routine was just, it was me. Do you know what I mean? It was like, and then getting rid of rope completely just opened up this whole, well, actually, when I managed to step back and get away from it, I could realize that I was keeping the audience away from me. They were just watching me do something whilst I was talking away, and it's all very good, but it didn't have the interaction, you know. And I'm not saying it, you know, that it was, you know, sorry, I'm not saying that a rope routine doesn't have interaction, because of course it does. And even just watching a magician do something in one sense is interactive, because that you're there watching a magic show and it's a part of the experience. But for me, taking away my strongest routine completely, I'll never put the rope routine back in my act. I won't.
I think something else that you've said there is really interesting as well. So you said the rope is me, with the performance, it's you. And that's something which I think is great about things like rope, is that it's unremarkable, a piece of rope. So it's all on you. What happens with the rope is for you as a performer and from an audience as well. Anything that happens on the stage with a piece of rope, with an egg, like with anything completely unremarkable, which children's entertainers, we tend to do things that have incredible, remarkable things, but unremarkable things like a piece of rope or a bit of paper or whatever. Is you get so much out of that as a performer, and I think that's what sort of shows what you can do as a professional entertainer when you've got a bit of rope.
Yeah. I think Darren Mack is a guy who I've done a fair few shows with over the years. And one thing that he would always say is that the rope is his chops. He would use his rope routine to kind of instill in the audience that I'm a magician, but I'm going to start with this rope routine and I'm going to show you my rope routine. You're going to like it, and therefore you're going to enjoy the rest of the show. you know. But for me, you know, I used to always perform it at the end, and it would be this like finale piece, and that was kind of that. But for me, anyway, getting rid of it was probably the best thing that I'd ever done when it comes to my actual show. I can show you it if you want. Do you want to see it?
Yeah, let's see it. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, this is a new piece of rope, and I think you know as well as I do, when you perform with new rope, it's never really your best friend, is it?
No. Like when you have a brand new deck of cards and they're slipping about all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. So what I would do, I would start off, I'm going to like forget all the patter and everything that I say. I would explain I've got 3 pieces of rope. There's a small piece, there's a medium-sized piece, and of course, there's a long piece of rope. I would begin by having all of these examined one at a time. They'd throw them back to me and I'd miss it in a load of gags and things like that. But then I take the 3 pieces of rope, I give them a little snap, and they all become the same size. And then I would show they really do that there. That was the small piece. This piece right here, that was the medium-sized piece. And this was, of course, the long piece. Now, what I'm going to attempt to do is something a little bit different. I'm going to get rid of one of the pieces and I'm going to show you something with just 2. If I take the 2 pieces, I give the 2 pieces a little shake. That's when the 2 pieces become one long length.
Nice.
And then I'd say it really does. Look, you can see that this really is one long length. I'm going to take the ends, and if I take the ends of the ropes, I give the ends a blow and the ends fall off, which leaves me with just a middle. And it really does leave me with one long, solid middle. Until we take the ends, I give the ends, and I hang them over like this. I give the ends a little blow, and the ends melt right back off. And then if I take the ends of the rope, I'm going to try it again, but this time it's a little bit more unusual, because this time if I take the ends, I give the ends a blow, the ends fall off again. But this time you can say stop whenever you want.
Stop.
Right there.
Yeah.
I give the ends a blow at the very point that you call stop, and they link right back on again. And then if I take the ends of the rope, I take the ends, and all I do, I place the ends of the rope over here inside my pocket. I give the middle a snap, and the middle become the ends, and the ends become the middle. And it was like that. Usually there's a lot more patter that I would be saying. There's things that I kind of do, you know, as people are watching like this, I'll say you can hold your jaw back up and, you know, and whatever. But that's the general routine. But the one thing, so looking at the routine, the one thing about it that I never liked was the fact that I started with a small, a medium, and a long. Yeah. And I literally end up at the end with just one piece of rope. So the whole thing never did flow and made sense, but the magic would just pop, and that would be what got the reaction. So I'd never really had to.
I think it makes more sense than finishing with 3 pieces of rope in the same place that you were.
Yeah. Well, what I used to do, I would take my top hat off. I usually perform with like a top hat, like quite a big top hat, and I would take the extra piece, I put it inside the hat and just carry on. And what I would find is people would forget that I put that piece inside my hat because my arms were moving and I did this routine. And a lot of people would never even, they would just forget about the rope. It was just, bang, I've just seen all of this stuff. That was good. Right, that's the end of that, you know. So, yeah, that was basically roughly it, but without any of the interaction, and there was a few phases extra that I usually do as well. I've got a 1 rope routine that I perform, but I think I'm now definitely done with rope and it's out of my act for good.
Yeah, I've got this. I'm playing with this. I chucked a bit of it. Well, I didn't chuck it away. It's in my drawer. But this is the 10-year 4 nightmare thing.
Oh yeah.
So it's literally, but it's short and sweet. But it's you tie that onto there with that, and then you can pull that bit off, and then you can put those back through there and put it back on again. But I'm trying to work out a reason why at the moment for this. So that's a bit of a project at the moment. That's a September project, working out why. I've done it a couple of times in holiday parks, and the reaction to it, like, obviously I've done more than just that, but the reaction to it is so strong. People are flabbergasted by it, and I like that. So now I'm just trying to work out my reasons for it.
Okay, so that's your next step then. But it is, I've seen the 10-year 4 nightmares routine, and yeah, it's really, really nice, man. So I guess that's your next thing. So if we do this again, it'll be good to see what you've come up with so far, and maybe a little bit of progression on it.
Yeah. Even
and-
if it ends up being like my pom-pom stick routine and not having a point, because it's so good and strong.
Yeah.
It's even then you're like, what music do you put under it, and what do you put around it, and because it needs to have fluff around it.
Yeah, definitely kind of build it up a little bit. I think that's what I did with my rope routine. I would have always built it up. I used to talk about it being one of the oldest tricks in the world. And the first time I saw it was a magician in Egypt who performed it. It was all a true story, actually. I saw this magician in Egypt on the streets, and he performed the rope routine. And I used to tell this story, and I used to have some really nice, like, magical Egyptian music in the background. And I would stand on this little tabletop, so I would be higher than the rest of the audience, and then I would take my top hat off, and I'd be wearing a fez, and then I would go into the rope routine, with this really nice music in the background, and that's what kind of built it up. And because I was always talking about my experience in Egypt, and it came back to the end of the show, which was this moment that I was effectively teleporting people to, if that makes sense. But there we go. I think we should drop the rope chat for now.
Yes.
And I think we should move on. So something that we're having a little look at is this, and this is takeaway magic. But before we look at this, I think what we need to talk about actually is scripting and non-scripting. We'll go over this very quickly. So I don't script anything. Right. I did say that I'd highlight on this a little bit. So you script pretty much everything?
Pretty much everything. Pretty much exactly word for word as well.
Yeah. I don't script anything. I have this thing which is a starting point in my mind with a view to go out once I've learned them, what it is that I want to head out and perform, make sure that I'm competent in performing it, and make sure the start's good, the middle's good, and the finish is good. So therefore, in my mind, I can flow. And I know that when I get to the end, the audience are going to have had a good time. And my kind of point with this now, like in my mind, when I'm not scripting, I know that there is definitely a benefit from scripting material. There definitely is. A good friend of mine is passed away last year. It's called Adam Hudson. He scripted everything. He would struggle when he was put off track. Yeah. So he would struggle with hecklers. He would struggle with any kind of interjection. If he dropped something, he wouldn't be able to keep talking. He would pick it up and try and remember where he was. Not in a childish kind of bumbly way, but it would flow and it would still work. When I say childish, I don't mean, like a child. I mean, like probably a complete wrong expression, but he would still be able to make it work. But like, how do you find what's your experience with scripting when put off track? Or
so with scripting this is going to sound, I think because of the way that I script, I don't get hecklers,
right?
Again, unless they are asked for. So if I'm doing a kids show, if I look at family cabaret over kids show, but a kids show, you're asking the kids to heckle you and shout out and that kind of stuff like that. That's more of a free flowing thing. But with my family sort of cabarets that I do, when I go to holiday parks and stuff like that, is I walk on stage. The first bit that I do, the first 2.5 minutes that I do on stage, is there's no magic. It's just me and a microphone, and it's me talking, and it's basically stand up. I talk about being a dad, and I talk about how this isn't a kid show, and this is a parent show, and I make a couple of jokes, but also, so I think there's with heckling. I say that, and I've just stuttered as I said it, But with scripting stuff is that I am so comfortable. It seems so natural. It'd be really weird for somebody to heckle. And if they were to, I think that I would just ignore it and keep going. And the audience would come with me and that person would go, oh. And if they shout out again, I'd be like, are you all right? Okay. And continue. But I don't have heckler lines or anything like that. But also I'm like, because of so this is me unscripted. I'm very like hesitant about what I'm going to say and the way that I think and stuff like that. And when I'm scripted, I know I'm pretty much like a train. There's like if you watch me do my sponge ball routine, even when I went through that poem before, I mean, I went through that pretty quickly.
Yeah,
that's not how I'd perform it. But when I'm doing my routines, my sponge ball routine is quick, and it's almost like rapping. So you wouldn't heckle a rapper, because it's too fast to heckle. There's nowhere to do the heckles. Now, as performers, everybody needs to slow down. We all need to slow down. The slower you go, the more confident you are and the better a performer you are. But if you can do things fast in a slow way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So with that, but then also, so if I get somebody up on stage to do something, there's only one instance that I actually do this in the whole of my show, is that I get somebody up, and anything that I ask them, I've been doing this for a long time. There probably were stumbling blocks before for me, but I now know the answers they're going to say.
Okay.
Even if they're saying a sarcastic answer or a stupid answer or something to try and put me off, I've already heard it before. So I've already got my answer back for it. It's like a back catalogue of things. I think one of my friends talks about this. They talk about the whole thing of like if you fall through, if your foot goes through the stage when you're wearing a high heel, then you say, "Oh, it's just a stage I'm going through." It's that, and thinking of it as you walk off stage, you think of the things that you would have thought of, which you should have thought of whilst you were on stage. So you then write it down.
Okay.
And so I've got notebooks and notebooks of just things written down, and on my phone as well. My notes are just full of, oh, I could have said that.
Yeah.
So that's sort of, I guess, scripting as I go along.
Yeah. Okay. So I think what you've just said, though, is also a way that people who don't script also broach their performance in a very similar style, because, you know, the things that you've just said, like about it's a stage that I'm going through. Well, when I'm performing, if a child walks in front of me, or, you know, in whatever environment I'm performing in, imagine a kid walks past, I can say, "I don't really, ladies and gentlemen, it's just a stage she's going through," you know, and it's like, in one sense, a lot of jokes have already been written and said. So I guess there's like a back collection which is built up inside your mind. And although that isn't necessarily ad-libbing, it's still using existing jokes and things like that to work with. But one thing that I don't like to do when I perform, and I genuinely don't, is like taking jokes like, don't worry, it's just a stage it's going through, because other performers use it as well.
Yes,
like, yeah. Like, there's the thing, like when you perform in a show, that you're worried in case a performer is going to say the same lines that you're going to use. And if somebody uses that line before you, you know you can't use it again.
Yeah.
But
children's entertainers are the absolute worst at this.
Say that again.
Children's entertainers are terrible with this.
Yeah. Oh man, they can spit them lines out like a machine gun.
Yeah, but they've taken all the lines from somebody else.
Yeah.
Something happened earlier this year. Is a big deal. It was all over the telly and it was all over the news and stuff. And I spent 2.5 hours writing a joke. 20 seconds of a show. It took me 2.5 hours to word the thing right to be able to do it on stage. And it worked for 3 days. And on the 4th day, I said it, and everybody, rather than going ha ha ha, everybody went, and I went, what's just happened? Because when I'm traveling around the country, I don't watch the news. I don't read the newspaper. So the thing that had happened had become this massive, great big deal. And I was making a joke out of it, and everyone thought it was very funny until the person that did the thing went on telly and went, this has got to stop. People keep making jokes about it, and I feel really bad. And I went, but I'd not seen that interview. Everybody else at the show had.
Right.
So I walked on stage, did the joke, and everybody went, and I went,
That's the situation.
But yes, I ended up writing 2.5 hours it took to write that gag.
Yeah.
Which is sad, isn't it? Sad way of spending your life.
Oh, I don't know. I think it's good. I think, like, I do think that I should script something at some point. And in fact, I tell you what, we're going to get to a section in a moment, and I think we should get to it now, right? This is this takeaway magic where you can buy a magic trick, you can pull it out of the box, and you can perform it. That's how a lot of magic works, right?
Yeah.
So what about this then? Instead of originally we're saying that, you know, I'll take a routine, you take a routine, and let's see how it looks in however amount of time, right? And let's say at the end of the month, we come back to this, we'll do another live and we'll look at each other's routine. You're going to script it, I'm not going to script it. But why don't we take each other's approach and work with that? So I will script a trick. You just keep it in your mind. You don't script it, and you perform it to me, and I'll perform it to you. All right. I think here's one thing back to scripting and non-scripting that I think is where scripting absolutely works, right? I know it always works anyway. Of course it does. It's two different broaches of performing, so it works. But the one thing that I think with scripted material is when I was demonstrating my rope routine to you, I can tell you that you did not see my rope routine, how I perform it to an actual audience.
Yeah.
Because I didn't go in with my introduction and the way that I usually kind of set the performance up before I start to do it. But when you script a routine, and the thing is this, when you've got the prop in your hand and you don't even need to be in the mindset of performing a trick, you can perform a routine that's just going to come across incredibly well because you know what you're going to be saying anyway. You've already rehearsed, you've practiced, you've got it. It's not only scripted, it's embedded in you as a part of your performance.
Yeah, it's kind of learned. So the first time you walk on stage and perform that routine, you already have learned the routine. You haven't learned. So script with I think this goes with both of them, with scripting and non-scripting. You haven't learned what might happen in the audience reaction. And you go, oh, that joke doesn't work. I'll take that out. Or, oh, I could have said this here and that could have been good and that kind of stuff. But yeah, you will. It's like a pantomime, I guess. That's I see.
No, it isn't.
Oh yes, it is. It's so pantos have got loads of improv in them, and if you watch a panto at the end of January, like or on the closing night, and you watch the same panto on the opening night, it's got a script.
Yes.
But on the last performance of a pantomime, there's a lot more in that. And the script is a distant memory. Which I find really interesting about pantos, because they've got quite a short run, but so much happens during the time.
And that's a really good point because, like, coming back to this, right? I don't know how to differentiate this really, but so I'm going to take my old friend Adam again because he's the only performer that I've worked with consistently who scripts. Right. He would perform his scripted routines, and let's say, for example, he'd been performing the same routine for 10 years. He would stick to the script that is tweaked over duration of 10 years, but every time he performed it, it looked fresh.
Yeah.
It looked really good. But there's the other side when it's ad-libbing, and you're coming out with the material, but you've been delivering the same material. Your brain's a little bit tired, so therefore your material starts to look wooden. You know, when a performer stands up and it's almost like he doesn't want to be there himself, or he's forgot how to deliver the punchline. There's one specific performer who I've worked with for years and years, and I've seen him gradually become very, very wooden when he performs. And it doesn't matter. I would tell him that myself, like, you've become wooden. It's something that we could have a conversation about, you know. I'm not going to name, obviously, who it is. But that wooden, when somebody comes wooden, it's like this structure it's almost like the person's body has just become an old tree over time.
Yeah.
It's like I've been this flamboyant thing, but now I'm static when I'm performing as well. It's very wooden, you know. But I find that people who script their material and deliver it's very rarely wooden, even if the performer's thinking, I've done this a million times, but his acting is delivering an act, and it's very clearly and obviously an act.
I script my facial expressions as well, and I script tearing up in certain places and stuff like that. So I guess it is like they say about being an actor playing the part of a magician. This is like ultimately acting. I used to tell, like you were saying about your rope routine being, it's true. Everything I do in my show is a lie. None of it exists. I'm not even from the South. It's saying that there's a sweet shop saying the best sweets in the South. That's ridiculous. I'm from the North. I'm from Cheshire. Not as north as you, but but I'm not from the South. I used to tell. I guess it's a bit like doing the snowstorm routine. Why do we do a snowstorm routine? Because our granddad's dead and he liked snow, so we can pull on emotional heartstrings. But the I used to do a dovpan routine about my granddad, and I guess he did have a jar of sweets in his study, but the whole thing was about this tin was a special tin, and my granddad would always give me a sweet and say, "Don't tell Nana about it," and I'd eat the sweet. And then my mum eat the sweet, and then one day, and I'd have one sweet in the dovpan, and then one day I went to his house, and I said, "Can I have a sweet?" And he said it was empty. And I started to cry. So he gave me a tissue. And I used to tear up. I used to do this at kids' parties. And the kids would be like, "Is he all right?" And it's blooming brilliant. So I'd tear up, get the tissue, because flash paper doesn't look like paper. It looks like tissue. I get the tissue and wipe my eyes because I'm remembering it. And then he'd say, "Do you know on a tear you can make a wish? So if you're ever sad about anything, you just need to make a wish." And then he put the flash paper in. He put the tissue in the tin, lit a match and put it in, and whoosh, boom, and do you know what I wished for? And all the kids go, "Sweets." And I can't remember what the line was because I don't do it anymore. I wish that I didn't have school on Monday, or something like that. And then I'd take the lid off, and it'd be full with sweets. And I think that so people, and I would get parents coming up to me and grandparents going, "That's a really beautiful story. It's so lovely that you shared that." That's a load of bullshit. It's but because it looked like I was remembering it, and because it looked like I teared up, it was different. And I think that's something with scripting. At the same time, I think even that can be wooden. And I think it's really, really important to be in the moment. And for audiences to feel that you're in the moment, because I've seen performers before. I saw some really good magicians, not just magicians either, but I earlier this year, my wife took me to see some magicians, and I went, "This is going to be an amazing show because they're renowned." And I went, "Oh, this is really hard to get through." it's just a script. I was like, it's just a script being said. Again, I won't name them, but it's just a script being said. And I got to the end of the thing, and my wife was like, "Did you enjoy that?" And I said, "Yeah, it was great." Because I don't want to feel like that she bought me these tickets and I hadn't really enjoyed that much. But I did. I just kind of went, nah, like I don't feel like I'm in the room with you. Like I feel like, and that's what I want to feel. Darren Brown says that in his book, in the latest book, that what audience want is an emotional connection with the person on stage. And I think that's super important. Like, and whether that's on stage or whether that's in close up, even more so in close up. I've seen magicians in close up doing a routine, and I've gone, oh my God, why are you doing Paul Daniels' chop cup routine word for word? You're just remembering somebody else's something and not doing it properly. And the people there, they're going to be amazed. It's a good trick.
Yeah.
But
it's sad, isn't it, when a performer takes somebody else's routine and performs it like that. I don't think there's anything worse. I'm going to get rid of this scripting and non-scripting for now, but I know one specific chap who he does this for a living, and he heads out and he performs other performers' professional routines, and he delivers them word for word. And oh man, I even remember this specific performer, and I'm obviously not going to mention his name because I think actually over time he stopped doing this, but he would dress up just like the person as well. So effectively, he would become
a tribute act.
Yeah, exactly, like a tribute act magician, and it's just such a strange thing to see. I think the one thing about it is this: when he was actually performing, he would be getting all the laughs in the right places. He would get some of the wow in the right places. But then when he would finish and he would walk off stage, he would get the exact same admiration from the audience, because I've done it when I've been in the audience and I've watched the audience reacting to a performer who's done somebody else's entire act or full solid routine. And at the end of it, the audience have reacted exactly how they would have reacted if they'd watched the original performer performing that routine. And there's that bit of you where you're watching thinking, one, how has he got the gall or she got the gall to get up and do that? But then if I was to do that and then the audience were laughing at what I was saying, but I was just delivering somebody else's routine in my own mind, I would have to kind of go, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I've got to be honest, I am an absolute fraud. What you're seeing is somebody else's act, and I shouldn't really be doing this, And then watching it, and then when he came off, and he was really happy with his performance, and I went backstage and I was kind of watching, and other magicians were going, "That was amazing! Wow, well done!" Because they hadn't seen who'd originally performed it, and in my mind was like spinning almost like this. What? And then to take credit for it instead of even being honest to the other magicians that were there performing at the same event and saying, "Oh, that was somebody else's routine. Have you not seen it? It was somebody else who's done this."
Yeah.
And it's like, even that wouldn't be acceptable.
I think this is something which isn't talked about enough within the magic community, because if you were doing it with a comedian, comedians are like,
oh yeah.
Bang on it. They're like, that's somebody else's joke. You don't do that joke.
Definitely,
And so with magic, it's quite a niche thing. Yeah, most people have never seen a live magician. So the fact that they haven't seen a live magician means you're the first one they see. That's kind of a statistical thing. That is, most people have never seen a live magic performance. Right. So it's so niche. Whereas the people that will go out as a tribute to Peter Kay, I find that really bizarre, because you can go and see Peter Kay. But then at the same time, you've got like Elton John tributes and stuff like that. It happens in all genres of the arts. But in magic, if you go and see an Elton John tribute, you're knowing that you're going to see a tribute to somebody else that you can't afford to buy tickets for. Or if you're seeing the Peter Kay one, you're seeing Pound Shop Peter Kay.
K. Peters.
Yeah. But with magic, it gets presented as people's original material.
Yeah.
Everything I do in my show, I present as my own material. There is one joke that I've nicked from another magician, and I contacted them and said, I love this joke. Do you mind if I perform it? And they said, go for it. Everyone else does.
Don't worry, I nicked that off somebody else.
No, it's their line, but they said thank you for asking.
Excellent.
They're like, there's so many people use that line now because I did it on telly, and I went,
Right.
oh, okay. Whereas I wanted to do in a Halloween show as a one-off. I asked Barry and Stuart if I could do the thing with the sword on the arm.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
In C minor or something. And they said, if it's a one-off, yes. Because I said, look, I don't do many adult performances. This was years and years and years. I was like, I don't do many adult performances. So do you guys mind if I do that in my thing? And I think if you ask, people are generally pretty okay with it.
Yeah.
They'll either say yes or no.
Yeah.
And if they say no, respect they've said no.
Yeah.
But if it's just so bizarre, and people buy tricks. So when you buy a magic trick, you buy the performance rights.
Yeah.
You buy the performance rights to perform that trick. But if you watch the video tutorial and there's a don't perform it exactly the same way.
No, definitely not. Yeah. In fact, I think a lot of releases have not been a lot of new magic releases haven't been honed, and they haven't been thoroughly performed, or they haven't been thoroughly explored by performers. Like a lot of the routines that I put out, I'm only going for myself. Like I will head out and perform the material that I release. Like yourself, you'll head out and you perform Propcon. I've seen you perform it. It's something that you do and you know it like the back of your hand.
Yeah.
But the one thing that a lot of routines haven't yet been is explored by other performers.
Yeah.
And that's something, a progression of a routine, isn't it? I guess. But one thing that you touched on that I think is quite important is that the nicking people's material as a performer and putting it in your act, we need to talk about that a little bit more. It's absolutely not okay. There are standard gags that have become standard gags over time, and you might slip them in to your shows because you're filling that gap, or you can't think of anything else to say, but you've said this thing and you've said a joke. Then okay, great, you've told a joke. But heading out and performing other people's material knowingly, and it must always happen in the sense that if you perform a show and another performer watches what you're doing and they take it away and they perform it either very, very close to how you've performed it, or very similar, or word for word and move for move, that is definitely theft.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's the argument of, well, if they're doing it publicly, why can't we copy it and do it?
So well, if they're doing it in a lecture, go for it.
Yeah.
If they're lecturing it, then they are saying this is available for you to use. You've come to the lecture, you're okay. If they're doing it on stage to an audience, then that is not okay.
No.
Because with a lecture, you're sharing your intellectual property with people. Whereas with a stage performance, you're doing it to entertain people. Yeah,
definitely. And I think like a lot of the routines that do end up commercially successful are often shop bought routines.
Yeah.
Like you look at a Paul Daniels chop cup routine. Well, the chop cup has been performed for years and years. But the thing that hasn't been performed for years and years is the way Paul Daniels performs it, because he's just honed it himself, how he actually does it, and has condensed it so it is Paul Daniels' routine, right? Yeah. But if somebody heads out and performs Paul Daniels' routine word for word, unless they've purchased the rights somehow. Or I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit with what
that can be done. You can buy the rights to stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if you buy the rights, great. But I think one thing, if anybody watches this, or even if anybody's even watching this, but I think one thing that is important is, okay, if you are about to head out and perform somebody else's routine and it's very close, just think about it, change it, be inspired for definite. Absolutely be inspired by other performers. If the performer has performed, let's say, a Tournament Restored newspaper and you really enjoyed it and you want to go out and perform a Tournament Restored newspaper, go and do it, definitely. But don't do it word for word, don't do it move for move, and don't take the hook that person's created and make it your own hook as well.
Yeah.
Try and think of your own hook. And if you are nicking material and you're a material thief, you've got very little to be proud of, really. You know, it's like if you are and you're getting reactions, like I was talking about the performer who I watched him absolutely steal material, right? There was no question, but he's got the ability to present.
Yeah.
And he's got the ability to hold an audience. He's got showmanship skills. He is a good, strong performer. The only thing that he wasn't good at doing was performing his own material. But there's nothing wrong with talking to other magicians or people from other industries and getting ideas to
I don't think a lot of people know they're doing something wrong.
Yeah,
in lockdown, I watched a video of another performer, and they were doing my vent act word for word, which I was like, what? Why are they doing that? And I rang them up, and I was like, and they were like, hello, blah, blah, blah. I was like, hi, it's Frostie here. They were like, oh my God, I'm a massive fan of yours. They were like, I do your vent act. I was like, I know, that's why I'm calling you up. I was like, and I was like, I saw your video. They were like, oh, did you enjoy it? I was like, not really, no. I was like, it's my act. I was like, can you please remove it? And they had no idea. They thought that it was great and they enjoyed it. And they went, oh, I'll put it into my show. And I was like, can you please remove it? Because it's my material. I was like, it's something which has taken me a long time to write and is a reason why people book me. And I don't want anybody else doing it. And I was quite shocked by it, but they didn't realize they were doing anything wrong. They actually thought that it was, they thought it was a compliment.
Strange. It must have been really weird to watch. Really strange to watch. There's a routine that I perform in every show that I do that is my own routine. It's called Fruit Cocktail. And I know other magicians all over are performing this routine. It's done as a routine. I put it out and it's done really, really well. I released it in a book, Tricking the Brain, a few years ago. But if I saw somebody performing it exactly how I perform it, I would know that they've just watched me perform it, because the way I explain it, I don't explain it line for line and how I present it. But to see somebody mimic what you actually do, is it a compliment? Well, it is it's a compliment, isn't it, really? Maybe for the fact that I haven't seen anybody perform it is not a compliment. Maybe I need to change what I'm actually doing. But anyway, you know where I'm going with that. Let's move on a little bit. We've only got a couple of minutes left. So I think what we're going to look at is takeaway magic. So this is the last thing that we need to quickly talk about, right? I've got my fan on me at the moment because I'm really, really hot. But this might all go terribly wrong. So these are the type of magic tricks that we don't necessarily perform in shows, right? I know I definitely don't perform anything like this. I've had this open out of the box for around about a day. I haven't put any thought into the performance of this, but this is what we're going to swap roles on. I'm going to send you one of these over in the post, all right? And you need to figure out in your mind, just keep it in your mind. I don't want you scripting anything. I'm going to be testing to see if you're scripting, but you won't anyway, right? But this is this is the effect. Let me show you the basics of the effect. So this is absolute zero presentation, all right, at all. So basically, we've got lots of different jigsaw pieces right here, all right, pieces of a puzzle. So I think what I could now have you do, but I'm going to do it for you so it is absolutely free and fair. You see that you get all the choices yourself, right? So we've got all these different jigsaw pieces. I'm going to tip some out onto the table, and this is where the decisions are going to be made from the table. All right. So I'm going to tip a few out here. That's probably far too many. So let's get rid of a few of them. All right. But the idea of this is for you to pick a piece which is face down. So it's a bit more of a mystery to it. All right. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We're going to get rid of just a few of these pieces. I'll dip these over here for now. We'll get rid of these. We'll mix the ones that remain. We'll drop them down here onto the table. So now there are 3 which are face down. So I'll get rid of these that are face up. Yeah? All right. All good. So the idea is, provided I'm doing this correctly, you get to pick one of these. So this is 1, this is 2, this is 3.
Number 2.
This piece.
Yeah.
So you want me to get rid of these 2 here?
Yeah.
Hang on a second. Wait there. I think. Yeah. Okay. So them 2. I'm making sure I'm doing this right. Hang on. So now the truth is this. There's been a mystery. This is as old as the hills, but the decision was completely yours. Yeah?
Yeah.
There is underneath this mysterious magical silk is a jigsaw with 1 single piece missing. Don't know if you can see that right there.
Yeah.
But the unusual thing is that it fits perfectly. It is the only missing piece.
Hey.
All right, don't clap that. So you get the idea of the trick, right? So
Yeah.
I think the jigsaw plot has a lot of scope to be really entertaining. Why it's a classic, it's why it's successful. It's something that I've never performed in my shows. Have you?
No, I saw David Blaine do it.
Right.
It's his finale to Magic or Real or whatever it was, the tour that he did of the UK.
Okay, cool. So my challenge then is for you to wrap your head around how you would perform it without scripting it. And I'm going to try and script it. All right. So I'll write it out how it's meant to be, spend maybe a few hours on it, actually coming up with a script. And the next time we launch this live, let's perform it for each other. You know, I mean, I can probably have it. I'm not going to maybe not memorize it word for word, so I can have it written a little bit back so I can refer to it or whatever. But let's compare it and let's see how it looks and look at the process. Really, like, did you enjoy it? Were you just thinking, I wish I scripted it? You know, and let's just see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm up for that.
Okay, cool. Right. Well, I'll get one of these to you in the post. So there we go. That is the challenge. That's the takeaway magic challenge.
That's a good thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's something that I wouldn't usually perform. I'd never think about putting this in my act. In fact, it's one thing that I've seen, you know, watching videos going, oh, that's good. And then in my mind, I'd never perform that, you know. And it's for no other reason than me of having a mindset. And I think all mindsets can be, you know, switched. And why not? It's a really good trick. You know, I think the one thing about this variation is you've got a lot of freedom. You know, there's like, you can pick bits up. I've now got 2 pieces here that are face up. But let's take a few more pieces and let's mix these. So there are 2 that are face up. Or there's 2 again that are now face up. But you get the idea. There's more that's 1 face up, or there's 2 face up, or you see where I'm going. All right. It's something that does appear really free and really fair. You know, and it's a good method. It's simple, straight to the point. And let's face it, you have this on a picture frame, displaying to your audience. There's no reason why.
Really nice, couldn't you?
Yeah, definitely. There's no reason why we couldn't be performing something like this in our actual shows and get good reactions, you know. So there we go.
It's like the final Rubik's Cube, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a mystery. Like, wow, that ending is. You have this. However, we hide. Let's figure out how we're going to cover it up and what we're going to do with it. I've whacked a piece of silk over it just to give you a rough demonstration of what the trick is. How would I perform this? I don't know. I don't know how I would actually perform and present this just yet. But I don't think I would be taking it far away from the obvious, like a puzzle. A jigsaw is a puzzle, the final piece, all that kind of stuff that does logically make sense, but somehow heighten it with words. I think if I was going to be scripting, let's see what happens.
Yeah, I like it. It's cool.
Yeah. Right. So I think we should call it a day. Let's end this. Is there anything you want to say? Anything you want to add?
No. I think I'm trying to work out what I'm going to do with it, but I'm already scripting in my head.
Stop it. Well, I think when I don't script, I am figuring out words that I'm definitely going to say, things that I'm going to include, times that I'm going to say it. And, there's an element of scripting, but it's not necessarily, it's not scripted. It's like, I need a root. The roots are firmly in the ground and all the branches are to jump from one leaf to another, and those leaves that are on the plant, if you're this hypothetical plant, are all little stations that make sense within the performance. And I just jump from leaf to leaf, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Does
it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Right then. So we'll leave this one for now. Let's say bye to everybody, I guess.
Yeah. Thanks very much, folks.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you all when we next do this and you'll hear about it. Subscribe to this and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.